concept. In what way? Whoops. Sorry, TMI. In what ways, like, is that a concept that needs to be sort of steered around, or are there kind of helpful kind of takeaways from it? And I'll just share that personally, that for me, I kind of have my own little spiritual practice, which is that I really like to think about the words to the Internationale that call, that refer to the final struggle. C'est la lutte finale. Groupa nous et demain. Organize yourselves. And tomorrow, the international, or the international gathering of people will become the human type, is the words that, for me, it's helpful as a sort of redirect of, I think, some of the confusion in end time kind of thinking. But I also recognize some risks in it. As a tradition, all traditions have such wisdom, but also such risks. And there's definitely a lot of the cleaning vibe in that tradition. The cleaner crow was active in that tradition. So other gleanings or sharings.
One thing that comes to my mind is that there's just an incredible intensity of feeling, emotion. And spiritual practices help us to cultivate an awareness of those feelings and not push them away, not be afraid of them, and allow them to be, honor them, and to know that there's more. There's something more, that we don't have to get lost in them. We don't have to get trapped in them. But we are going to be challenged in a way perhaps that we never have. Maybe some of us have, but I think most of us have not.
Yeah, that's definitely what I'm feeling. And are there more comments? Because I know our group, we just talked. Like we went in. I know I did, and I know Marianne did. Are there more?
Sorry, Dave, it took me a while to get my mute button off, but I think that what I would just like to share is this lived sense that the future that we envision and hope for, which may be different for all of us, is a vision that we and maybe even our grandchildren, our children and our grandchildren may not live to see, but the importance of keeping and living towards that vision.
Yeah, I share. And I just keep being reminded of like who we want to be, what things do we have to do to be who we want to be, and living toward that vision. And that whatever comes, I think it could be a long period. You know, like, yeah, we could see, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna say much, but I think I'm like rooted in science fiction as well. Octavia Butler, you know, and, you know, and looking at the way cycles work. And I've always believed it's got to get worse before it's gonna get better, like the cycle you talked about, Sister Sharifa. But go ahead, Cynthia.
Thank you. So in our conversation, we were talking about the sort of approaches and feelings that lead to a dead end, like fear. I brought up a lot of feeling terrified, feeling fearful. And my conversation partner brought up sort of the open-ended things. He recalled Sister Sharifa's idea of the whirlwind of goodwill. And as soon as I heard those words again, I realized that I felt so much more open, not the same dead end as my fear and terror evoked. So my idea coming out of this conversation is that my task is to develop and practice and nurture whatever it is that keeps me feeling open and expansive and giving. Because the alternative will kill me, I know it. The alternative will raise my stress level and compromise my immune system, make me a much smaller and closed person. And that's sort of, I see that now as a clear choice.
Ashe, thank you. I just want to point out, like what you said, like the way our body holds fear and stress. And I had a friend who, like during the military dictatorship in Ethiopia, he left. He was an economist, and he brought his family back and to the United States. And what saved his life was that an officer coming to arrest him saw his picture on the wall and realized he went to school together, and he was able to leave. But the stress from that, he could only work a few years after that. When he got back, he was an economist in New York, and still has a heart condition to this day. But the tolls of stress are real. So whatever we can do to be grounded, and I struggle with that myself. You know, having borderline high blood pressure and high blood pressure, that's something that I deal with. So I just want to see if there are more thoughts and before we close out, because we're nearing the end of our time.
Just one last thing for me that Joyce actually reminded me of, and that is that Buddhist principle of dedicating the merit, it's called. Whereas, for example, David, you've been at this work for a number of years, and you're listening to Cynthia, and she's talking about how she wants to be less afraid. And David, you can take a portion of the merit that you've accumulated with all of your good works on this earth, and you can dedicate a portion of that to Cynthia so that she will be less afraid. And we can do that one for another. We have built up such a cache on this planet of doing all the activity and all the work and all of the prayers and everything we've done, that we can dip into our reserves and dedicate a portion of that to a specific person, to a specific action, to the election. We can dedicate a portion of the good work that we've already done to the peaceful transition of power. We're going to dedicate that work that we've done already to that very specific thing. So I just also, it was just running through my mind as I was talking to Joyce, because Joyce, if I may, she was reflecting on how as you age, sometimes you want to do more, but you really don't have that energy perhaps anymore, or you feel constricted by whatever you feel constricted by. And so we were talking about that. For all the good work that she's already done, she can start to mete that out. She can start to dedicate the merit of all that work to different people, to different places on the earth. And yeah. So I was just reminded of that.
Is there, that is so beautiful, and I just want to ask directly if there's like any specific ritual like shape for that process that you might suggest?
The way it's realized is that for every prayer that you make, every practice, because in Buddhism they're called practices, where you recite, mantras for a certain number of mantras, you're focusing on a certain spirit or energy. But you can do it with any practice whatsoever. Whatever your ritual is, at the end of your ritual, if you say, I dedicate the merit of what I have just done to, and then whatever it is you want to dedicate it to, and then that's it. That's how that's acted out. That's why it's called the dedication of the merit.
You all, I'm so full right now and thankful. And I just want to honor each one of the contributions. And Tebow, Alan, Sister Sharifa, thank you so much. And thank you for everybody who attended. And so honored that we have people like Warren in our community. And Warren Cooper, who's a minister of music, is going to close us out.
Thank you, David. And thank you, everyone. I was the conversation partner who was very moved by the whirlwind characterization. We all have a lot of energy, and I love that characterization of it because it accounts for the force that is there, and it gives it a purpose. So I appreciated that, and appreciated everyone's comments. I was looking for a closing that in the midst of this apocalyptic set of possibilities would offer the appropriate challenge and also have a lightheartedness to it that might refresh us. And I looked at lots of different things and found and remembered a poem from a guy who I guess is one of the good old boys in broadcasting, and I am impressed with myself that I did not hold that against him in choosing his poem. It is a poem that I heard a while ago, and it's called The Responsibility Poem. It's by Charles Osgood, who's of CBS fame, and the focus of what it's talking about is nebulous, and I'm moved to believe that it's calling the responsibilities that each of us have in this moment occur to us as we are responsible in our practice. And the poem goes like this. It's called The Responsibility Poem. There was an important job that needed to be done, and no reason not to do it. There was absolutely none. But in vital matters such as this, the thing you have to ask is who exactly will it be who will carry out the task? Anybody could have told you that everybody knew that this was something somebody surely had to do. Nobody was willing, and anybody had the ability, but nobody believed that it was their responsibility. It seemed to be a job that anybody could have done if anybody thought they were supposed to be the one. But since everybody recognized that anybody could, everybody took for granted that somebody would. But nobody told anybody that we are aware of that they would be in charge of seeing that it got taken care of. And nobody took it upon themselves to follow through and do what everybody thought that somebody would do. When what everybody needed so didn't get done at all, everybody was complaining that somebody dropped the ball. Anybody could see it. It was an awful crying shame. And everybody looked around for somebody to blame. Somebody should have done the job, and everybody should have, but in the end, nobody did what anybody could have. Whatever it is that our responsibility speaks to us to do, may we be found doing it in the Spirit. Amen.
Okay. Amen. Thank you, Warren. And you all, I just want to point out, Amy put in the chat that in 2 weeks, we're going to continue this conversation, part 2. One of our speakers is going to be Patrick Taylor, former Bernie staffer, board member of Brand New Congress, and some other dope people like the dope people that we had on this call. So see you all the week after next. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.